Hey guys, Terra Master here. I just want to say I'm sorry this took so long, but I had to coordinate some schedules because I wanted some guests to be in the rest of these videos, and everybody was busy at different times. But I've got a good amount recorded now, and I think the rest of it shouldn't be too hard to get. So the rest of the box review should be coming, definitely not as long as this one took. Anyways, enjoy. Hey Legacy community, it's Terra Master, and welcome to part 3 of the full Battle City Box review. Joining me today for pretty much the whole video is a special guest, Cursive Yugioh. What's up, dude?
I'm extremely special. I've never been on this channel before in my life. So excited to be here.
It's so special. It's not like we do collabs all the time or anything.
Exactly.
Anyway, like promised, this was supposed to be a Yugi episode, and it was supposed to be, and so it is. So of course, first we have to start off with considering all the new Yugi skills we got. Probably the best one, I think you agree, would be...
Oh yeah, for sure.
Magnetic Attraction. So pretty much it turns one Magnet Warrior into a gadget. Now let me say that in terms that everybody can understand. That when you summon a normal summon, specifically a Magnet Warrior monster, you add another Magnet Warrior monster from your deck to your hand. So that's what the gadgets do for those of you who may not know. And then for the second effect, you can reveal two different name Magnet Warrior monsters from your hand, and then you search the Valkyrion. So it's a +2, which the good skills are so far we've seen, right? So It's got that going for it. It gives you consistency for a combo. What else do you want to say about the skill?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it literally turns your Magnet Warriors into gadgets, which is extremely huge in this deck because the gadgets search each other and like that's all their effects have to offer. But Delta is super essential to get this deck rolling, and thanks to the skill, you're guaranteed at least on your second turn you can drop a Delta if you don't open up with it, which makes the deck so much more consistent and definitely gets rid of a lot of bricks. And because of the skill, the fact that you're running vanillas isn't actually terrible. So
yeah, it also allows the rare summon Valkyrion with its own effect, right? Which is kind of cool.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, let's actually just go straight into a replay to show off what a sample deck can do here. Alright, here's the replay, and let's go. As I set up speed duels here really fast.
Yep, gotta be done.
Alright, so right away you can pop your skill, because you did see you opened the perfect card, which is Delta. Summon that. You search one because the skill activates first, obviously, and the gadget effect, the search effect goes off. Then the Delta will activate. You bury your most garbage monster in your whole deck, which is the Alpha. And then you activate the second effect when, since you have two Magnet Warriors, you can search your Valkyrion. So, like, it's not just that it's a +2, but most of the time it's a +2 on turn 1. It's very rare that it's not. And then you've got 2 protection for it too. And now I think you've played this deck more than I have, so you're going to explain the big play. Go for it.
Yeah, so you did just draw into your Magnet Conversion here, which does give you the ability to actually recycle both the recycle the Delta that you did just drop into your grave and the Alpha that is also in there. So you have a follow-up for the following turn. As you're going to see, Terra Master does flip this here. He's able to recycle both the Gamma and the Delta, which gives him access to summoning Valkyrion off of its own effect, which is phenomenal. We also have access to Delta to summon and dump. And yeah, if they do run over your Delta, you'll have all your Magnet Warriors in grave to go ahead and pop off with Delta and summon them all. Or, in this case, you can even send the Delta and just go right off here.
Yep. That is, let me do math here, 8,600 damage. 8,600 on turn 3. Yeah.
Plus, Terra Master's hand was crazy because he has the field spell to punish them for trying to run over your monsters, and Magnet Conversion has a Haunted Shrine effect in grave.
Yeah, exactly. So Magnet Shrine's Haunted Shrine effect really fast is it special summons a level 4 or lower banished Magnet Warrior monster. So all those that you banished, one of them can come back. Probably Beta because it's got the most power, right? And then Magnetic Field can bring back your delta and just keep you refueling from there. And then the field spell is great because even if they get rid of 2 Valkyrion, as long as you have a Magnet Warrior, you can keep looping into another one, and you can keep bouncing your opponent's monsters and hitting them. So, really cool stuff all around. Now, let's look at the deck. Alright, so here's the full deck. Now, obviously, you need as many delta as possible because you want to see it as often as possible. You got your standard protection of Spear Kiribos, Book of Moon, and I have a Waboku in here, and the reason I have that is because it works so well with Magnetic Field. Because Magnetic Field is that if your Magnet Warrior monster battles an opponent's monster and that monster is not destroyed by battle, you can bounce to the hand once per turn. So with Waboku, it's guaranteed that your Magnet Warrior monster won't die if they attack into it. And obviously if they're attacking into it, their monster probably won't die either unless it's something stupid. But then Waboku just becomes an instant bounce. So it's just too good to not play because it clears the field for you to then use your magnetic field to special summon again, and you swarm the field and you can just go for a big push after that. But yeah, you've got your as low least vanillas as possible. I don't know exactly how to phrase that, but you don't want to have too many. You don't want to have too many of these bad cards. So essentially, you figured one of each at least. I mean, because you have to have one of each just to summon Valkyrion from hand ever, and then a second beta just because it's the best one in stats out of all of them. But I mean, you can try just one of each and go like pure minimum on that. This is just kind of like a judgment call made on our part.
Yeah, and I will say something that like the deck does have a weakness in the fact that it does have 2 Valkyrions. These are its big beat sticks, and once they're outed, you ran out of your beat sticks. That does suck. And that's another reason why Waboku is very, very good in this deck, is because, believe it or not, attacking in and activating Shrink is a viable way to run over Valkyrion. We do have 1900s and 1800 beat sticks, which can run over a half attack Valkyrion here. So being able to protect it with Waboku and then also bounce off a magnetic field, so keeping your big body and bouncing their monster is fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, if they attack in with a plan to shrink, you just chain Waboku to the attack, and then they either have to keep attacking and just like take damage, or play their shrink anyway for nothing, but their monster gets bounced. So that's a really good. I'm glad you pointed that out. But other than that, you've just got a Foolish Burial for a quick sending a Magnet Warrior to the graveyard other than Delta, or you can actually use it with Delta if you have everything set up already to summon a Valkyrion. So late enough in the game, which is really like turn 2 or 3, Foolish Burial becomes a summon Valkyrion, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, and what's great with Foolish too is that Delta is basically a Foolish in a monster, and with drawing into both a Foolish and a Delta can help you fill your graveyard for a really, really quick Valkyrion, which is what you want to do. You want to beat down fast. Yeah, exactly. And then, of course, you have your second late game play, which is, other than being just using the field spell and continuously summoning magnets, you've got Magnet Conversion, which will recycle those. So if your Valkyrions are outed, you can win just by bouncing your opponent's monsters and never running out of yours between the field spell and the conversion. So yeah, Valkyrion isn't your only win condition. Yes, it's your best and your quickest one, but you're not confined to just Valkyrion. And speaking of not wanting Valkyrion to get outed, that's why you have Cosmic Cyclone, because you want to dodge things like Shrink, Book of Moon, Widespread Ruin, whatever staples you're going to be going up against. Yep. All right, well, in the side deck here, you've got some options that you could run that I guess we considered, but they don't like fit into your core combo, and they tend to just slow you down, don't you think? Right? Most of these cards. Yeah. So like Block Golem, which, could summon 2 rock monsters, but again, if you run Block Golem, you shouldn't really run Sphere Kiribos, because then once you use Sphere Kiribos, Block Golem is dead forever. So that's an issue there. It limits your protection, as also it's slow. You don't want to open it. Giant Rat, same thing. I mean, before you go on, one thing about Block Golem would have been fantastic if their effects on field weren't negated. Because the Block Golem could bring back Delta, would have been a phenomenal card to run, at least at 1, but the fact that you can't get Delta's effect off just really, really hinders what the card can do.
Yeah. I mean, it's a maybe a good late game card, like post Valkyrion, but the issue is it's such a bad early game card that you would just probably, like, you might just lose having one dead card in your hand. So
Exactly.
yeah. Same thing with Giant Rat, where it's very slow. It doesn't really help you get into the combo. It only floats into Alpha and Gamma. So, I mean, yeah, no. I would say no, but if you can figure something out, you know, more power to you. Rock Spirit is okay in that, you know, it can banish a Magnet Warrior potentially to set up a conversion. Maybe it can make use of Valkyrion once it's dead in the graveyard. But I think this was something that you tried, but you found it didn't work too well.
Yeah, it was just mediocre. It's great that it does combo with the Magnet Conversion if they do pop it before you get to use its effect. So you can banish obviously off of Rock Spirit and then have that target for Magnet Conversion, but it just doesn't offer enough to the deck.
Yeah. I have Foolish Burial in here just because if you want to run more than one, then if you feel like that's what really helps you get going, just as much as Delta. So if you feel like having 3 Foolish Burial is like having 6 Delta, then that's something you could think about too. Shrink is fine because your Magnet Warriors might need that to just like get over stuff, and it makes you less reliant on Valkyrion. It's just an option for that. Floodgate is interesting, mostly because it goes with the field spell, in that once you flip their monster, lock it down, then anytime you want, you can attack it, and you'll either kill it or you bounce it as long as you have your field spell active. Magic Drain is just in there again for Valkyrion protection. If your opponent is depending exclusively on spells like Soul Exchange and Hammer Shot to out your Valkyrion, then Magic Drain might be your best friend. Same thing with Magnet Force, right? If they're exclusively depending on like monster effects to out your Valkyrion, maybe consider Magnet Force. Like these are just like meta calls, right? Where
exactly.
it just depends on what the meta is, what you're expecting to go against. Like you're going, that's like with the 6-card side deck, you can only side deck against so much. So you have to side deck against what you're afraid of, right? And then if you really feel like the field spell is what wins you games, then you could run Metaverse to make it to run up to 6 magnetic fields if you want to. Mind Crush is fun because your field spell once again bounces their monsters. So Mind Crush is always cute whenever you have any bouncing effect, because then you can just call and get rid of whatever they have in their hand. So it's a fun little combo to get rid of any boss monsters they might have. Alright, well that's all for Magnet Warriors, and now I'm going to just quickly jump to, there's no need to explain anything here because it's not a new skill, so just going to quickly jump to the Gaia deck that we have here to show off. Now, a lot of it is the same, obviously, same skill. I have a Gaia the Dragon Champion in the extra deck for fun. But you've got your 3 vanilla Gaias. You've got your Summoner's Art to search them, Heat Wave, Charging Gaia, Sphere Kiribos. Nothing new there. Now, where you get into new stuff is Book of Moon. Book of Moon is cool because, unlike Sphere Kiribos, which can be played around, it lets you proactively put your opponent's monsters into defense mode whenever you want to. Right?
Whoa.
Yeah, amazing. Now, Book of Moon does one more thing. Do you know what that is?
What does it do, Terra Master? What does it do?
It can protect your Gaia from something like, I'm a Doom book, I can do cool things like this. Offerings to the Doom.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I can just make cards appear by typing their name in. It's amazing. Although I'm not sure that's what you were reacting to. Yeah, but to take out, and it also protects from a new card like Hammer Shot. But to speak about why Hammer Shot is in the deck, it's because the deck has problems with things stronger than Gaia, and since you can't use back row in the traditional sense, you have to go for a slow way of killing things that you can't kill with Gaia. Yeah, that makes sense, right?
I think so.
Yeah, so you have to use Hammer Shot to do that. Another option to make Gaia get over stuff is Sword of Poison. Now, this is a Gaylord special idea. Gotta give him credit here.
Those are my favorites.
Yes, yeah. He loves this card. So, I don't know. I don't love it as much as he does, but I think it's decent in this Gaia deck here. Yeah. I think that's it. Cosmic Cyclone is your new, better power crept back row hate over things like, you know...
Twister and Night Beam are gone.
Yeah, there's Night Beam. No longer any good. The good thing about this is it can hit your face downs like Night Beam does, as well as your face ups like Twister does. So you no longer need to even run offerings specifically for trap monsters, because Cosmic Cyclone kind of takes care of all that for you. So also trap monsters, haha, Book of Moon, you fool. Okay. Anyway, I couldn't think of a good side deck here, but if you have any live thoughts while recording, go ahead and throw them at me. But while you contemplate that, you've got the Exiled Force package is literally what it is. The Warrior Returning Alive is cool because that's just something to consider. You could even main deck that if you wanted, but that just recycles Gaia, and I think it's better than Dark Factory. Was that what was used before? Yeah.
Yeah, it literally is just better Dark Factory. Just, yes, you don't go plus off of it, but Dark Factory is just so dead early on, and it only works on vanilla Gaia.
Yeah, so this can work on Charging Gaia, it can work on your side deck Exiled Force. Now, Exiled Force is obviously because if your opponent is using annoying face-down monsters, like not even necessarily like Destroyer monsters, but also things like Kelbeck and Wall of Illusion, which just bounce your Gaia and make you lose tempo. You know, whatever monsters you can't get rid of, that Exiled Force can help you get rid of them. So that's the only side deck I can think of. Can you think of anything else that Gaia would need to worry about?
Not really, but I will say a lot of people are going to be like, you don't run any traps in Gaia, that's just a rule. Not necessarily true. In all honesty, Zoma is still a very, very solid trap to run in Gaia. It is another monster, and it is another answer to having big monster issues that exist. So if they clear your Gaia, you can genuinely punish them for it by activating a Zoma. It's actually more relevant than you think in a Gaia deck.
Yeah, it's not just that. It can also help you be more aggressive and maybe even go for an OTK if their field is clear, or if you can clear it with something like Hammer Shot. So, you know, balanced game to play there. Good stuff. You can even use other trap monsters now that we have so many options, but again, that's another video. Anyway, that's all we got for the Gaia deck. Let's actually move on to the next deck now. Okay, so the next skill is Beast of Phantom. Now, this skill, I don't even want to read it. It's just so bad. Like, if you want to read it, like, pause the video and read it if you haven't read it yet. But like, it's
do it yourself.
Yeah, like it's terrible. I don't want to get into it. Like I wish they would have made it better. I wish they would have at least allowed you to search the fusion materials, but they don't. Like, it's literally just like a bad fusion, not a bad, like a non-generic fusion party, right? Am I getting that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. And I mean, it has it's like bad fusion party and bad fusion recycling plant combined into a bad skill for a bad monster. Anyway. Yeah. If you do want to play Phantom Beast, though, we do have something for you, which actually uses the skill, the deck that Cursive's deck actually. No more Mrs. Nice Mai. So go ahead and talk briefly about why this works with Phantom Beast, and then we'll go into the deck.
Well, first off, Beast Warriors just have access, really easy access into the biggest beast deck available right now, which is Vorst Raider. And obviously with Tenki, it's a 2000, which makes it the actual biggest non-skill inclusive normal summonable beat stick with their tribute, which is huge. And then along with that, Beast Warriors just have piercing. So like Enraged Battle Ox and Wildhorn, piercing, so you're getting damage in very, very consistently, and then you're just popping your opponent's back row. Plus, it also allows you to clear up your own back row if you're clocking it with Tenkis. Yeah, exactly. And this skill is pretty much Amazon is Sage. Now, I admit I was expecting Harpy's Hunting Ground, but we got Amazon is Sage as a skill instead, which is fine. I mean, I guess it's more balanced because Hunting Ground would have been really strong, even though we only still have access to 3 Harpy ladies, but that's another topic for another video. But yeah, let's get right into the deck here.
Okay, so here's a replay of the Phantom Beast. Or I guess it's a Beast Warrior deck, not really pure Phantom Beasts. So, let's go. We set up speed duels here. Very important, very important. Yeah. Alright, so anytime you draw Tenki, you probably want to just drop it to get Vorse Raider, right?
Yeah, if you're going first, for sure.
Yeah. So you have a 1900 presence right away, and your protection is
2000.
Yeah. Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. Right, and your protection is pretty much like attack point based, is the way we've built this deck, or you've built this deck. Sorry, I had no part in this.
Yeah.
And then, would you go ahead and pop your skill on turn 1 always?
Yes. So, especially if you have important cards in your back row, you might not want to. But when you're opening up with a Tenki, worst case scenario, if you don't get to pop your opponent's back row, you just pop a Tenki. You open up room for that shrink to be set. You're still feeling pretty good. So.
Yeah, exactly. And now let's say your opponent is a fool who attacks into you with something stronger than Vorse Raider for some reason, like Gaia. Now, well, you've got your Phantom Beast Horn to give you 800. You destroy it, you draw a card, you pop back row. If they didn't have back row, like Cursive said, you can pop Tenki as well. And that would clear room for Foolish Burial, obviously, because you're still on those crosswings.
Still on those crosswings.
Always on those crosswings. But yeah, but at this point, if you've killed their monster on their turn and popped their back row, and you drew a second Vorse Raider, you kind of just win, right?
Yeah, like the deck is literally just beat down the deck. It's just a little bit better because it has easy back row answers and no more misses. Nice Mai. It's just play big beat sticks, man, and just win.
Yeah, just play big monsters, just win. And I mean, you didn't get to see it in here, but the deck also has a lot of piercing for those annoying decks that like to set a lot of monsters. But
yeah,
we'll show you that when we show you the full deck, which is going to be right now. Okay, here's the deck. The full deck, and as you can see, like I just said, the piercing monsters are your Enraged Battle-Ox, and you got 3 of your Phantom Beast Wildhorn. But take us through the rest of your deck.
Yeah, so like you said, obviously Enraged Battle-Ox being overall usually the better of the two, as it does give all your monsters piercing. Now, Terra Master is going to be on me about my crosswings. Going to be honest, you might not need to play them, but like I have a strange obsession with Phantom Beast as a whole, so like I'm really trying to make it as Phantom Beast as I can. But anyway, not the point. Crosswing gives a 300 buff to just your Wildhorn here, but it can bring him up to a 23, 24 with Tenki. Huge piercer, just a really, really big body, and this deck is just a huge beatdown strategy. So you have your big beat sticks here. You have Vorse Raider, 2000 beat stick. Cosmic Cyclone is actually really useful, even though you have no more misses Nice Mai, because going up against decks with things that run like for example Floodgate and Nightmare Wheel and stuff like that, and they just lock down your monsters and you can't trigger no more misses Nice Mai, having more back row removal is super huge. Obviously Foolish is just here for those crosswings. Believe me, it actually is more relevant than you believe. I've run into so many situations where buffing up Wildhorn actually changed the game. And I tell Terra Master every time I beat him, because a Phantom Beast Wildhorn is buffed by Crosswing. Crosswing's great.
Still on those crosswings.
Still on those crosswings. And then obviously Shrink and Horn is just to buff your monsters bigger. They just alter your opponent's attack. And Horn of the Phantom Beast can give you a +1 off of it. Now, why you might not want 3 is that, like I said, you're not always going to be able to trigger your No More Misses Nice Mai, so you still don't want to have too much clogging, and having a Horn plus a Tenki is already 2 of your zones used up. So 2 is a fine number.
Yeah, I can agree with all that. One quick thing before we go into some of the potential cards you could do. Another skill you could use. You could use Twisted Personality, just because of all the piercing damage you have that can give you counters. But there's also the potential that then your back row gets clogged because you have no inherent way to remove it. So just a lot of things to balance there. But speaking of No More Misses Nice Mai, now before I go into like the potential other options for the deck, I just want to talk about like the other options for the skill. Now it has a cute interaction with Magical Hats and Wild Tornado, where you could use Wild Tornado just by itself and pop your own Wild Tornado to destroy a card if you manage to do battle damage to them.
Yep.
And then if you're playing Wild Tornado, you could just consider playing Magical Hats in the same deck, so that your Wild Tornado can trigger off of that as well. So just a couple cute things you could do with No More Misses Nice Mai. Since Wild Tornado Works if it's destroyed by your own effect, unlike this next card, Waking the Dragon. Now, why is Waking the Dragon in here? It's actually a side deck card against a deck like No More Misses, that uses a skill like No More Misses Nice Guy, or even uses something that's a staple, since I'm on Dueling where I can do cool things like this. Breaker. Right?
Yeah.
So, if you know your opponent's playing a lot of breakers, it even works on Cosmic Cyclone.
Yeah.
Because
Terramaster just informed me of this.
Yes.
Big news.
Yeah. So it says if it leaves the field because of an opponent's effect and is now in the graveyard or banished. So if your opponent, regardless, even if they're using Nobleman of Extermination, whatever back row removal they're using, if that's a huge part of the meta, and so much so that they have to out your back row in order to have their combo safely go off, Waking the Dragon might actually be a good side deck card. And your 3 prime targets for it, I mean, they're not great. Like, I called Matt and the other Speed Duel devs cowards for not giving us better fusions. But you've got Joker, which sadly negates but doesn't destroy a targeting effect. You've got Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, which is just to beam. And then you've got Thousand Eyes Restrict, which is, you know, to play the more slow stall game if that's the direction you feel like you're going. One other interaction I think I want to ask you with, I just thought of it literally like while recording live. Amazon is Swordswoman. With No More Mrs. Nice Guy, if you were to like suicide damage with Swordswoman, could you trigger the skill?
Yes, it is still battle damage being inflicted, so the skill does trigger, and that is probably what they were thinking about when they made the skill, being the primary idea here, is that it turns your Swordswoman into a Swordswoman plus Sage all in one card, which is actually really cool.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool. So I mean, I'm envisioning, I don't have a deck like this to show you, but I'm envisioning a Swordswoman deck where you give them Lava Golem, you give them Santa Claus. Right, there's Lava Golem, there's Santa Claus. Okay.
There it is.
Yeah. So that's my random tangent. Anyway, go ahead and talk about the side deck options.
Yeah, so Sphere Kiribos is protection, and I mean, honestly, just skipping past Sphere and Book for a second here, Hammer Shot, Offerings, and Widespread are really, really huge cards, because something this deck can actually struggle with a lot is big monsters that your opponent has. Like, for example, we talked about very recently, actually, Magnet Warriors, and they have access to a 3500 beat stick, which is bigger than any of your monsters are probably ever going to get. But you could be like, well, just shrink them, right? Okay, yeah, sure. But if they also know you're on shrink and they can deck you out faster, there's no reason that they can't just summon Valkyrion in defense, and then you can almost never do anything versus that, which you need to have answers to these huge booties and these huge beat sticks. So things like Hammer Shot, Offerings, and Widespread are so important in the side deck here.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Now back to your defense mode turners.
Yes, so it is obviously protection to help, keep your monsters safe, which is huge. And as we mentioned earlier, this deck has access to so many piercers that putting monsters in defense position can punish them hugely by allowing you to plus off of No More Mrs. Nice by popping. And if you have Horn of the Phantom Beast equipped, you can plus even more by drawing. So turning to defense is phenomenal. Same thing here with Floodgate, Trap Hole, protection, and defense. And Mind Crush is just a great side deck card, man. Like,
yeah.
If your opponent searches, hit it. They search for Valkyrion, get rid of that Valkyrion. You don't want to see those. No,
you don't. And there's no way to summon Valkyrion from the graveyard right now. So once you get rid of it, Mind Crush, that's, perfect. Also, one more thing. In order to search Valkyrion, they have to show you 2 other Magnet Warriors in their hand. So you can technically get rid of like anything at that point because you know their whole hand. Alright, next deck is going to be... So the next card, which is going to lead into a deck that I want to talk about, is actually a card that Yugi used as well, and that's Breaker, the Magical Warrior. And because I'm going to be using his deck later on, I have Tensei here with me to talk about some of these spellcasters. What's up? How's it going? Alright, so this is Breaker, the Magical Warrior. This is, I think, one of the most powerful cards in the box, just in general, not just spellcasters. Every time when it's normal summoned, it immediately gets a spell counter, and that makes it go from 1600 to 1900 right away. So one benefit you see immediately is it can be used as just a 1900 beater. Then you can also remove a spell counter and you can destroy a back row card. And then it goes back down to 1600, but that effect is just so good. Like, for old TCG players, you'll know that Breaker was limited for a long time just because that's how good Breaker is, and it would not be surprising to see this as a staple in a lot of decks. What do you think?
Oh yeah, I think it's very useful. As you said, it's 1900 beater, so it gets over most things in the format. If you don't count something like, well, a Union Hanger can summon a 2100 beater, but even then Breaker's effect can actually make the White Dragon head smaller. For a specific deck, I've been testing it in Relinquished, and it can also noticeably destroy your own spells and traps. So if you've already used Relinquished on a previous turn, you can use Breaker to destroy the monster equipped to Relinquished and then equip another one. So it's a really versatile card for that kinds of decks as well.
Oh, that's a really good interaction. Yeah, I didn't even realize that it can destroy your own spells and traps. That's so good. That gives you so many more options, like you said, with the Relinquished option. If you're running something with Wild Tornadoes, you can mess with that too. So yeah, like you said, it's a very versatile card, and now I'm thinking it's even going to be even more of a staple because it just got better than I thought it was. Alright, let's move on to the Skilled Magicians. So you see now on the screen are the 3 Skilled Magicians. You've got Skilled Red Magician. We'll start with that one. They're all level 4 monsters. Skilled Red Magician is the only dark one. The other 2 are light. They're all spellcasters. And Skilled Red actually has the weakest of the stats. It's only got 1600 attack and defense. And they all have the same first half of the effect, where every time a spell card is activated, you place a spell counter on the card. And it's a maximum of 3. Now here's where they deviate, where you tribute each one of them to summon a specific kind of monster. Now Skilled Red Magician is you special summon an Archfiend monster from your hand, deck, or graveyard. Now Archfiend monster, we don't have a lot of monsters specifically named Archfiend, but we do have one, and that's Archfiend of Guilford. So that's one potential target, and Archfiend of Guilford is usually a level 6 dark, so you need a tribute to summon it. However, with Skilled Red, you can potentially turbo it out. Same thing with all these. So it's a fiend, so Skilled Red Magician is the one that brings out your fiends, your Archfiends. And
you're still going to have to activate 3 spells first, and then tribute a Skilled Red Magician, so you're not really even gaining card advantage, and it's just too much effort to really do anything good with.
Yeah, exactly. And while you're talking about that, let's just quickly go ahead and show that your other 2 options are Beast of Talvar, which is just a vanilla 2400, and you pointed out Lesser Fiend, which is, you know, I mean, it has a decent effect where it banishes cards destroy a battle, but like you said, it's not good enough to be worth not only using 3 skills, but also losing your Skilled Red Magician. So, for that reason, yeah. Go ahead. What were you saying?
Lesser Fiend is maybe the best option if you really want to use the card, since you can banish stuff like X-Head Cannon, White Dragon Head.
Yeah.
So like the effect is actually not too bad, but even then it's smaller than other tributes, and it gets stopped by offerings.
Yeah.
Book of Moon, Widespread Ruin, basically anything people play right now.
Yeah, exactly. And if it puts into defense mode with Book of Moon or something, then it's only got 1000 defense, so it's going to get run over easily.
Yeah.
So a lot of problems with the targets we have for Skilled Red Magician right now, and here's where I get to complain that we did not get Summon Skull. But, you know, what are you going to do? Anyway, the final part of Skilled Red Magician's effect is that you can banish this card from your graveyard, then target one card you control that you can place a spell counter on and place one spell counter on it. So it does have something additional in the graveyard where if you have another one of these spell counter monsters, you can go ahead and place a spell counter on it with Skilled Red in the graveyard. But that's a perfect way to move on to Skilled Blue Magician, who also has that same graveyard effect, and it's just better. So it's stronger in stats, it's 1800, and it gives you your ability to tribute if you want to, but I don't know if you necessarily want to use it for that purpose, because the Gaia the Fierce Knight monsters we have are just vanilla Gaia, charging Gaia, and in the box we got Swift Gaia the Fierce Knight, and they're all 2300 without an effect. Now, I can tell you I did test using Skill Blue Magician in a Gaia deck, and it just felt like it slowed the deck down. I don't know if you've messed around with using it with Gaia at all, but I know you have it in your Spellcaster deck.
Yeah, so I wouldn't use it for Gaia either. You already have 3 Summoner's Art and 3 Gaia the Fierce Knight if you use Knight of Legend, and that's enough in my opinion. So yeah, I wouldn't use this in a Gaia deck, but it's really good for the spell counter effect, and I use it in a more generic spellcaster deck with Breaker the Magical Warrior. Skilled Blue Magician is one of the biggest normal summons in the game, so even just summoning it is fine, and it can get over stuff like Command Knight in attack. It can crash with Gear Freed or X-Head Cannon. You can just also use it in defense, and most things can turn over it, so it's a very good thing to set on your first turn, similar to Command Knight. And with the Graveyard effect, so you banish it and place a spell counter on something you can place a spell counter on. So what I first thought of is using this in the early game, and then when you summon Breaker, you gain the 1 spell counter from Breaker, destroy a back row, and then immediately after that you put another spell counter on Breaker and destroy another one. Since Breaker is not actually once per turn at all, it's just limited by the amount of spell counters it has. So I think that's a really cool interaction. The only problem is that people are playing more chainable back row now. So a lot of the time when you summon Breaker, you already get Book of Moon on the summon of Breaker, which means it might be a little tough to use the extra spell counter.
If you do manage to get the combo, then you're going +2, which is so good that you're kind of going to almost have a big advantage from that point in the game, and you should win just based off of that if they were depending on their back row at all.
Yeah, burn decks actually kind of suffer from this combo.
Oh yeah, burn and stall and all those decks that want to keep the game slow as possible. This deck would completely make it really hard for them to do that. So it's perfect. Yeah. It's a perfect counter to that. And the final one is Skilled White Magician. And this one brings out exactly Buster Blader. So unlike the other two, which say Archfiend Monster and Gaia the Fierce Knight Monster, this one specifically just says Buster Blader. So usually your only target would be Buster Blader, but we do have this other one that's Buster Blader, the Destruction Swordsman, and that one is actually treated. Name changes to Buster Blader when it's in the field, on the field, or in the graveyard. So you'd have to somehow put it in the graveyard. Maybe you Foolish Burial it if that's what you want to do. But I don't think that's gonna be any kind of a competitive deck. The only other advantage Skilled White Magician might have is that it's 1900 defense, so it's like a Command Knight with the ability to tribute into a stronger monster later. But that just doesn't seem that good. What do you think?
Yeah, it's not really relevant. You could theoretically use it to tutor out Buster Blader from your deck for Dark Paladin, but you already have 3 copies of Buster Blader and then 3 copies of Emblem, so you should have a pretty consistent way to access Buster Blader already. And while the Destruction Swordsmaster is kind of cool, it can equip stuff so they don't get in the graveyard. They actually, they have to go to the graveyard first, so anything like New Doria will still activate before it can be equipped to this card. Yeah, Skilled White has alright stats for level 4, but the effect is not very useful.
Yeah, and one more thing to point out, Skilled White also has a weakness compared to the other two, where it doesn't give you a spell counter from the graveyard, so you're not even able to use it to combo with Breaker. And then generally, I wanted to just kind of talk about, for all 3 of these cards, and even for Breaker, how you, some easy ways to get spell counters on them. Now, of course, Skilled Red and Skilled Blue do it from the graveyard, but there's also Apprentice Magician, which you use in your deck as well. When Apprentice Magician is summoned, you can go ahead and place a spell counter on a card on the field. So Apprentice Magician, again, works well with Breaker especially. And then there's also a card that used to be good in speed duels. It hasn't been seen for a while. That's Dark Red Enchanter, where you can possibly refill spell counters on that and then just use it for some kind of hand control. But again, I think that's going to be kind of a hard combo to pull off. So the easiest way you want to go is Breaker, and now let's show you the deck. Alright, so here's the replay, and it's your deck, so go for it. As I just set up speed duels here really fast. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, okay, so here we have the Skilled Blue Magician. If you're going first, it's a really good card to just put in defense mode on your first turn. So it'll probably keep you alive. The only thing that's probably going to get over it is like Vor's Rager if you play against Beast Warriors. I don't know if anyone plays those. Or like a White Dragon head equipped with the Metal Tank if they open the Union Hangar. But the Skilled Blue Magician is probably going to stay alive most of the time unless your opponent plays some specific cards.
But even then, I just want to point out that this hand, there's this Sphere Kiribos that we opened as well.
Yeah.
So even if you want to protect it from something that is bigger, you can do that.
Yeah, and if they waste something like Inner Conflict on the Skilled Blue, that's totally fine. Then they use the Inner Conflict.
Yeah, exactly. And then as you can see, once you go into turn 2, you would draw your Apprentice. So what would be your options there?
So here we have the interesting combo of Apprentice Magician and Creature Swap. So Apprentice Magician is actually really good here, since if it's destroyed by battle, you can special summon a level 2 or lower spellcaster from your deck in face down defense position. And it actually triggers in your graveyard even if it's sent from your opponent's field. So you get to take one of the monsters with Creature Swap, then run over the Apprentice Magician, and summon another Apprentice or an Old Vindictive from your deck, in addition to taking control of their monster.
Yeah, exactly.
So you gain a lot of field advantage through this play.
Yeah, and then the second option is to summon Breaker.
Yeah, Breaker is another good option. If they destroyed the Skilled Blue Magician on the earlier turn, it's possible that you could actually just destroy 2 of their traps or spells, unless Breaker gets like Book of Moon, of course. But even then, like if they Book of Moon or Offerings the Breaker, that's actually fine since it's such a low commitment play. So you don't actually lose that much by doing that. And if they have something bigger than Breaker, you can use the Creature Swap to take control of that after you got the value out of Breaker effect already.
Yeah, so the Creature Swap is so good is that it not only works well with your floater, it can actually work really well with your Breaker. Is that, like you said, once you have the value off of it, it's just a vanilla 1600. That's not good. You can just swap it for something better.
Yeah.
Now, I'm just going to show that you also have the ability to Inner Conflict. So you said that if your opponent has 2 monsters, is what you told me, then you can just go ahead and take their weaker monster and then Creature Swap their stronger one. So here I just drew, if we get another turn, you draw your Old Vindictive, and then you can use your Sphere for protection. If you don't want to do that, now here's what that full play looks like with the Apprentice that you were talking about earlier, is that you would give them the Apprentice, you would run it over with their monster, you would float into another one. You could also do Old Vindictive if that's what you wanted. But, so now look at this setup.
Yeah.
Like, you would have your opponent's monster in the 3rd zone, that's blank. You would have your Skilled Blue, and you have your Apprentice. I mean, that is, you've gained so much advantage in just one turn, and you become so hard to kill now because, like, worst case scenario is Inner Conflict, and they can only take one of your 3 monsters now, and then there's really no way to kill you at full 4,000 life points anymore.
And the Inner Conflict is really cool here since Creature Swap can sometimes be a little dead if you don't have a monster to use with it, but in theory, as long as your opponent has multiple monsters, you can use your skill to make it live in way more situations than you'd think.
Now let's talk about the full deck. Okay, here's the full deck, and I'm just going to go ahead and let you explain from wherever you want to start explaining this deck from. Go for it.
Okay, so the start of this deck is, of course, Breaker the Magical Warrior. The easy ability to destroy spells and traps each turn with the help of Apprentice Magician and Skilled Blue Magician is really great. It's kind of meta dependent, of course, like if there's a lot of beatdown decks with chainable back row, this deck becomes a lot weaker as well. So it's more suitable for matchups like Twisted Personality decks, which were really popular before the box, but we'll have to see how the meta shifts from now. I opted to only run 2 skilled blue magicians, since it's not that great by itself. Like, it works, it's an 1800 body, so it's going to be one of the bigger monsters that people play. But you don't really just want to play an 1800 normal monster, and like, it should be fine. Like, you want it in grave basically, so you can just wait until the right moment and keep it in the grave until you can get the most value of it. Then we have 3 Apprentice Magician as another way to play spell counters. It's a little slower in the sense that you need to summon it. So ideally you'd set one on your first turn and then have your opponent attack into it, summon another one for your next turn, and then maybe destroy 2 back row with Breaker after flip summoning Apprentice. And I was actually going to use a little more versatility first. As you can see now, the only other target for Apprentice is Old Vindictive Magician, which is, it's a great card. I run 2 copies in case I draw one, and I always want to have one in deck to summon with Apprentice, so running just 1 copy makes Apprentice a lot less versatile. I was actually running Magician of Faith before, but I found that it's really slow on the first couple of turns. Like, you don't usually use creature swap at the very beginning, and Book of Moon you also kind of want to save it for later, so Magician of Faith is unfortunately a little slow, and there's just nothing super powerful to take with it. Like, yeah, creature swap's a cool card, but it's not like absolutely mandatory to get out of the grave. So yeah, just Old Vindictive Magician's probably enough for now, I think. You could also run Allure of Darkness to like fuel the Magician of Faith, but it's just, at that point, it gets a little clunky, and I found that there's no space for like defensive cards unless you go over 20, and that's also not really optimal.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I appreciate you putting the deck at 20 cards.
Anyway, as we are an inner conflict deck, I wanted to run 1 tribute monster in the, or yeah, a couple of tribute monsters. So in this case, 2 copies of Blowback Dragon. This one could technically just be like anything, but I think that once per turn ability to destroy a card on the field, like, yeah, it's a coin toss. I think it's like 40%. Right? It's a chance to destroy one, but it's once per turn. So actually, if you like play against slower decks and they don't get rid of this immediately, you can actually just keep trying to destroy their cards. So it just gains more value as the time passes. This could be, yeah, it could just be a Chinzo or Spell Canceller or Grandmark. There's a lot of other options, but I opted for Blowback Dragon.
Yeah, I mean, especially with Grandmark, you don't need to destroy sets unless you're going to target set monsters, because Breaker is your back row destroyer anyway. And that's for Jinzo. Yeah, I mean, Jinzo's always an option, but it just depends on, maybe the meta is not going to be very favorable to Jinzo now. With, like, you can see in here you have 1 trap card, right? So
yeah,
I don't know if this is going to be like a trap heavy meta like we had recently in Speed Duels. So I like the choice of Blowback Dragon, and always with Inner Conflict it gives you the OTK option, right? Because especially with Breaker, like, that's so good, where you can destroy a back row, and then that's only 3,900, but if you have the combo with either Apprentice or Skill Blue, Breaker can just go back up to 1,900, and now you have over 4,000 damage.
It's kind of meta dependent. Like, if there's a lot of floaters, you can also run Dark Ruler Hades. Yeah, then we have 2 Sphere Kiribos, well, it's technically still a monster, but you probably won't be using it as a monster most of the time. So I'm pretty sure that Inner Conflict decks will still be really relevant, and you don't want to die against those. So yeah, it could be Warrior still, or maybe a more Tribute monster focused deck with Chinzos and Spell Cancellers. But Inner Conflict will definitely be a deck you'll face a lot. Then we have the Triple Book of Moon. So this is actually something that's been limited for a long time in the TCG and just recently came off the ban list this year. And people actually play it in advanced format as well, so I'm excited to play it here as well. It's a super versatile card, and there's people already making videos about it, so I don't want to like turn this into a long rant about how good Book of Moon is. But in short, like the specific synergies in this deck include putting Old Vindictive Magician back face down, so you can reuse the flip effect. This is especially good if you had to flip summon it on your turn to make it go in attack. So then when your opponent tries to attack over your Old Vindictive Magician, you just Book of Moon it goes back face down, their attack continues, and then you destroy another monster on their field.
I do want to say that Book of Moon Old Vindictive Magician combo is actually a very good answer to Spellproof Armor, Jinzo.
Oh yeah.
Because your Book of Moon doesn't work on Spellproof Armor, like anything they have with Spellproof Armor usually, right? But then if you can Old Vindictive Magician once, and then if they attack into it, now you've just gotten 2 monster kills off your Old Vindictive Magician using a card that they thought was useless, but you found a way to use it because you have a flip effect. So that's really nice.
Then Creature Swap is a little more deck specific. You won't see it in that many decks, but there are a few things that can use it. Of course, here Apprentice Magician is the main way to use it. Give them Apprentice. We showed the replay before.
Yeah.
You know how Creature Swap works with Apprentice. As you mentioned, Spellproof Armor is kinda annoying, and Creature Swap won't do basically anything against that deck. But other than that, it's like really nice to take, especially if you take control of some bigger monster like XYZ Dragon Cannon. You can then just attack over their stuff with the Dragon Cannon, destroy their back row, especially if you have a couple of extra cards in hand.
Yeah. And then finally, you're using Widespread Ruin as protection with 2 more in the side deck.
So this was a little awkward. Like, I wanted to keep the deck as 20, and I was just wanted one more defensive card, and I feel like this is kinda nice since it's not too predictable as if you only play one. So your opponent might not see it until late game, and then they won't play around it. So it's kind of a surprise factor. Of course, you mentioned that Jinzo is out there to ruin all traps, but the deck has quite a lot of Jinzo answers already. So I think the one Widespread Ruin should still be fine and won't get locked by Jinzo too often. One weakness, of course, is that you can, since it's a battle trap, you might just get hit by Cosmic Cyclone or XYZ Dragon Cannon before you even get a chance to use it. So it could maybe just be like a chainable card like Offerings, but I think the one trap out is nice.
Yeah.
Against a lot of aggressive decks, especially if people don't expect to face this card.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, I have 2 more copies inside, and that's specifically for Spellproof Armor. So I want to side out the Creature Swaps against that matchup, since they're absolutely dead unless they use Zoma the Spirit, but I don't think that the post-Battle City versions of that deck actually play Zoma that much anymore.
No. I don't.
So, yeah. So you just want more traps against the Colossus.
Tell us why you're citing Cosmic Cyclone.
That's just for against anything with a lot of traps. It's a little rough since you pay 1000 life points, so it might be suboptimal against burn heavy decks. It's also really nice against moth decks if people still play that. You can banish the Parasite Paranoid and it actually won't trigger, unlike with Dust Tornado or Twister. So they won't get the free moth off of banishing their Parasite with Cosmic Cyclone.
Yeah, they also don't get to put the Parasite back in the deck to draw a card.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yep. And Nobleman of Crossout?
Yeah, that's kind of for more stall decks as well, besides burn decks, just like any viral despair decks using New Doria and Zombina. Zombina will actually still summon a monster from the grave if they have one, but it's going to get banished, so Haunted Shrine can't bring it back.
Why Defusion? Is this just for Dark Paladin?
No, it's not for Dark Paladin, it's for XYZ Dragon Cannon.
Oh, that's right. That is a fusion monster. It doesn't feel like it because you don't play Polymerization, but that is a fusion monster. Yeah.
Especially good against that one since... of course, if you use this on any opponent's monster, they won't ever summon back the materials.
Yeah.
So it's just a quick play removal for any fusion monster. In some decks, I've tried out Lost Wind, and that has its upside since it can recycle itself, which is really nice against the XYZ deck. But this is a way better top deck, so like if your opponent uses XYZ Dragon Cannon and then the Night Assailant loop to destroy all of your cards on the field, you might not have like... top deck in the Lost Wind might not save you next turn.
Yeah.
So just the instant top deck defusion, return it to the opponent's extra deck is really nice.
I actually really like that because, like, what I've heard people talk about is using Lost Wind and using Ally of Justice Core Destroyer. But this, I think, is honestly better than both because Lost Wind, like you said, you have to have it first. It's kind of like a trap hole kind of thing where you have to already have Lost Wind before they summon it. And you can't top deck it later. And Ally of Justice Core Destroyer just gets stopped by back row. So
yeah, I really don't like Core Destroyer. If you try to use it against any of the smaller unions, like if they have the Y equipped with Z, they just protect the Y with Z, and then your Ally of Justice Core Destroyer dies in battle.
All right, well, that's all we got for this deck. Thanks again, Tensei, for coming on.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, awesome. Thank you, man. Okay, now that we've talked about generic spell, the skilled magicians and the generic low spellcaster deck, thank you to Tensei for that again. And Cursive is back, so welcome back. And
thanks, man.
Since we've talked about spellcasters and Buster Blader, especially with skilled white magician, it would be a crime to not talk about the greatest spellcaster, literally the ultimate wizard in terms of attack and defense, the Dark Magician, and a skill we got that goes with that Dark Magician. Now this is no longer Yugi, which I guess it was no longer Yugi when we started talking about a Mai skill, but you know what? That's fine. Transitions are great. We've got Magician's Act here, which is an Arcana skill which does two things. Now the first one is okay. It guarantees you a Dark Magician on turn 1, or if you don't want Dark Magician and you drew it, you can put it back and get another card, although that seems very inconsistent and weird. But the way I think you want to use it is to guarantee that Dark Magician in your hand. Mm-hmm. And the second effect is it's Pot of Greed. And anytime, now a lot of veteran Yu-Gi-Oh players will tell you this, anytime there is a draw 2 text on a card, that's a good card, right?
Broken,
exactly. It needs to be banned. So, now, the best way to use this, in my opinion, now I know you're a big fan of Dark Magician OTK, and I know you'll probably come up with that very soon for everybody, but as of right now, the best way I could come up with to use this is to put it into a Dark Paladin deck. So, without further ado, let's go into a Dark Paladin replay. Alright, so here's the replay. And now I will admit that I forgot about the skill for a minute, and after I saw this hand, I was terrified. But thanks to you being here, you reminded me that you could swap one of those for a Dark Magician. So you activate your skill right away. I put that extra poly back since you only need one, and I grab the Dark Magician. Now, as you can see, since you drew your emblem, that's your Buster Blader, that's your poly. But now, here's the big brain play that separates the Terra Masters from everybody else. You can play your Recycling Plant, and you can discard one Polymerization to add another one. That's right, the biggest brains. Anyway, so you can summon your Dark Paladin, and that's what the deck does. It will consistently summon Dark Paladin, and then...
Oh wait, Terra Master, where's your discard fodder?
Good question, Cursive. Now you see, Fusion Recycling Plant can not only search Polymerization, but it can also, at the end phase of a turn you Fusion summoned, add a material back to your hand. And you want to add Buster Blader because there's a card that special summons Dark Magician from the graveyard. Now I'll get into that one and actually show it in the deck list. But this is it. This is Dark Paladin that can negate one spell, and that's the consistency. And then after that, you draw Breaker, so you're no longer afraid of traps now, if that's what they're depending on to try to get you. I drew another card for another turn. You draw Lost Wind. That counters another weakness, which is special summon monsters that are just bigger than your Paladin. So, is this going to be a competitive deck? Probably not, but let's look at the full deck before passing judgment. Alright, here's the full deck. Now, the cards you already saw, the recycling plant to grab your poly. You got your 2 fusion materials. Now, the good thing about the skill is it allows, and the emblem, is it allows you to only run 1 of each, which is far less brickier than if you've watched Cursive's video on Is This Viable, where we did have to run more copies of Dark Magician and Buster Blader. So that's nice. And there's just weakness addressing cards, so Lost Wind Shrink for stuff that's bigger than Paladin. There's Breaker for hopefully traps because you can negate spells. There's Defusion for OTK plays. Yes, yeah, this gives you nightmares for OTK plays where you can split your Dark Paladin back up into your Blader and your Magician to go ahead and go for that well over 4,000 damage. It's actually over 5,000 damage, so it spits on Golden Ladybug. And then Defusion is also something that people are side decking for XYZ Dragon Cannon, and you main deck it. So look at that. That is matchup brilliance, for lack of a better term.
Matchup brilliance.
And finally, something I did not get to show off in the replay at all is Silent Doom. Now this card may look like Silent Doom, but it's actually Pot of Greed. Now the reason it's actually Pot of Greed is I'm going to take you to your skill, where your second skill is during your main phase, you contribute 1 monster whose original name is Dark Magician to draw 2 cards. That's why once you've fusion summoned, you can use Silent Doom to essentially as a Pot of Greed, because as long as it resolves and your Dark Magician is on the field, now your skill will give you 2 cards, and these 2 cards can be discard fodder. They can be follow-up like Breaker or Defusion. They can be protection like Lost Wind or Shrink. They can be whatever. If you're Yugi, they can be whatever you need at the time, or they can just be whatever they happen to be. Because most of us aren't
exactly
Yugi. One more thing I do want to point out, which I forgot, is this is also Pot of Greed, except this is Pot of Greed from your deck. If you want to run multiple Dark Magicians, now it doesn't make sense with this deck, but it's just an option to consider with the skill, is you can use Dark Magic Curtain to summon Dark Magician and then Pot of Greed it off. But yeah, I mean, if that's what you want to do. Now, having played against this deck, what do you think about it? That was terrible.
I don't think it adds enough at all. It's a Dark Magician, and then you can set monsters, and just having a Dark Magician on the field, you can Pot of Greed it away, but like, then what do you do?
Yeah.
Right? I just think it's just better get it to your hand, pop off a Dark Paladin, and then bring it back for no real cost and an actual just free draw too.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? That's the deck kind of is a potential anti-meta deck, if nothing else, in that if it's a very spell-heavy meta, Paladin could be broken, but if we're seeing the same old inner conflict stuff, then Paladin's just going to get inner conflicted and die. But again,
and I guess before we move on to the side deck, we should probably mention the other potential skill to use.
Ah, yes, you're right. Yeah, so the other potential skill to use is Fusion Party. Now, I know Team United We Stand did a video about their own Dark Paladin deck where they use Fusion Party to try to go into the OTK without needing polymerization, but I think this is better just because Fusion Recycling Plant makes it more consistent.
Yeah, I agree.
And also gives you discard fodder at the end phase. So I think it's just better than Fusion Party. It's better to just run the guaranteed open Dark Magician and Pot of Greed skill. Yeah. And then like you have access to 5 or maybe 6 if you wanted to polymerizations. Yeah.
So
exactly. Yeah. And not only that, but what's really cool about this deck is because of the Silent Doom and the emblem and even the Defusion, you can actually summon Dark Paladin up to 3 times in the same game. Or because Fusion Recycling Plant legitimately recycles Fusion. It's not a trick name. So there's that you got going for it. And then the side deck just addresses more weaknesses. So if traps are killing you, throw a Jinzo in and tribute your Silent Doom Dark Magician for Jinzo after you've Pot of Greeded, or if you don't want to Pot of Greed, whatever. Cosmic Cyclone is a faster out to traps as well. Book of Moon is just Book of Moon, if you think that's a better option than what we have. Hammer Shot, again, monster stronger than Paladin. Out those. Here's a spicy out to monster stronger than Paladin. That's the Solitary Sword of Poison. Now this will make Dark Paladin, get this, 5,800. Huge. Big boy. Now this Dark Paladin running over anything that's 1,800 or below, just it wins you the game right there. So that's kind of cool, something to consider, because you're kind of depending on Paladin to be your only monster anyway, so it's not like the Poison Sword's drawback is going to come in a lot of times, unless you have to summon your Breaker. Mind Crush is Mind Crush. We've talked about it already. And then, if you're really, like, needing fast options... Oh, no. This is for Spell Canceller, specifically. Now, as you can see, this deck has, Dueling Book tells me, 14 spells. So, if your opponent goes first, and they summon Spell Canceller, you might just lose, especially if they can protect it from a Breaker attack, which is, main deck, your only option to kill Spell Canceller. So, if that's the meta, you can use Widespread Ruin to kill it when it attacks, or you can use Zoma to just kill it whenever you want to kill it. So, I'm sure there's more options. There's also Mirror Wall. Anything else you can think of for Spell Canceller?
Not off the top of my head.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's what we got for Spell Canceller. This is a Dark Paladin deck. If you're gonna play this, don't expect to win tournaments, but expect to have fun, because I had fun when I was playing it.
Exactly.
Yep, so that's Dark Paladin. We got Dark Paladin in the box. This is one of my favorite monsters of all time. I don't know about you, but any deck that can essentially decide the game against Kaiba in Battle City deserves a deck of its own. So that's
beautiful card.
That's a deck based around the best boss monster of Battle City. Don't at me, Dark Paladin. And I think that's all we have for this video. Terra Master and Cursive out.